I'd like to welcome you to our demonstration of the Harbortouch Retail software. Before we jump into the Harbortouch Retail software, we want to talk a little bit about Harbortouch itself. When you sign with Harbortouch, you're getting more than just a POS software. The free POS program entitles Harbortouch's customers to a custom programmed POS system with an on-site installation and comprehensive training. This program includes 24/7 technical support and a lifetime warranty. If there are any hardware issues, a replacement will be shipped overnight for free. And most importantly, the software, hardware, and payment processing services are all handled in-house by Harbortouch, so we can offer a single point of contact for any questions that you have about the system. Harbortouch is able to provide these services for free due to its business model. Harbortouch provides support and payment services, creating an inherent interest in the profitability of the business. Ensuring that the hardware and software are always operating correctly reduces our support costs while providing the business with stability and security. All right, so the actual hardware that you'll receive with the Harbortouch order is going to be the Elite 2. This is going to feature a 15-inch touchscreen display, encrypted card reader, solid-state hard drive, along with a sleek aluminum casing to withstand the demands of a business environment. All orders of Harbortouch Retail include the Elite 2 station. You'll also get a receipt printer, thermal receipt printer, a barcode scanner, keyboard, mouse, and a cash drawer. There's also some hardware accessories that can be added for a monthly cost. This is going to include a pin pad, a scale, a customer display, and a few others that we have coming out soon. All right, so we'll now take a look at the actual Harbortouch Retail software. You guys should be able to see on my screen here. Yep, there we go. When we first get logged into the software, we're going to step through some basic functions that a regular employee like a cashier would need to know in order to operate the business. Once we get through those basic functions, we're going to spend the bulk of the time taking a look at the back end of the software on the management screen and seeing how we can customize the software to suit different business environments. So right now we can see the default splash screen. This is where software is going to load to. From here we can click on this POS icon. That's going to bring us to our main sales screen. Now, before we run a sale, it's going to ask us to sign in. We'll do so using the username and password, which is going to be unique to each user, and that's going to bring us over to our main POS screen here. This is where we're going to ring in all of our transactions. It's where a regular employee, like a cashier, is going to spend about 95% of their time. So first we'll run through just a most basic transaction here. We'll ring in an item. Now, normally on the Harbortouch Retail software, we're going to be ringing in those items using the barcode scanner. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to be typing in the SKUs rather than scanning them with the scanner. So what I would do is go ahead and type in or scan in the barcode. That's going to add the item to our check down here at the bottom of the screen. And I'm then going to go ahead and press the green payment button. It's going to prompt me to choose how we're going to be paying out this transaction, if we're using cash, credit, or a few other options. And we'll take a look at custom tender types a little bit later. For this sale, we're just going to pay it out with cash, $7. It's going to let us know the change due, and then we can go ahead and select complete sale. Will let us know the change. It's also going to print out the receipt at this time. And from there, it's going to allow us to move on with our next transaction. So as you can see, once we understand the basics of the system, it's very easy to quickly move forward and go through several transactions in very quick succession. Now that we've taken a look at a few basic transactions, we'll take a look at a few more complex transactions and some different things we can do to manipulate and change the transaction. So we'll start by ringing in that item again. And this time, instead of paying it out right away, we're going to take a look at some of these buttons down here at the bottom of the screen. First, we'll go ahead and apply a discount to this item. We can either select this button down here at the bottom, or we can press F2 on the keyboard. Both are going to bring up our discounts panel here. This allows us to change the price of the item on the fly. So I would be able to type in 10%, and it's going to let us know how that affects the price of the transaction. So there's three ways that I can affect the price. I can type in a percentage off, I can type in a dollar amount off, and I can just type in a new price for that item. All of those are going to update simultaneously. So if I type in a 20% discount, you'll see that's going to update. It's going to be the equivalent of $1.20 off and the equivalent of a new unit price of $4.79. Once I've typed in the discount we want, we can go ahead and select change price. We'll see that applied on the check and everything reflected with the total. We can then select payment and move on and cash out this transaction just as we normally would. Another option that we'll have is the ability to change the quantity. That's how many of the item that we have on the check. So right now we only have one basketball. If they were buying several at one time, we wouldn't necessarily have to scan in each item individually. We can go down here and use the change quantity button. And that's going to allow us to update the quantity of the item. We'll go ahead and make it 10. We'll see the quantity field update here on the check, and we'll also see the totals update here at the top of the screen. Once we have that rang in, we can go ahead and select the payment button. It's going to give us our regular payment options. One thing I do want to point out at this stage is that for a regular transaction, we have two options down here in this transaction drop-down box. You can either have this an invoiced transaction or a part transaction. Part transaction is more like a hold, usually used for a short-term hold, like if someone forgot their wallet in the car, something of that nature. But we can also select invoice, which is going to be our regular sale. Now we're pointing this out because we're about to see that list expand once we go in and ring in this next sale. So for this next sale, instead of just ringing in the item right away, we first want to select a customer. The system has a lot more features and functions that we can do once there's a customer attached to the transaction. So to select a customer, we're going to go down here, select change customer, or we could hit F6 on the keyboard. It's going to bring up our customer database. First thing we'll notice is that we can scroll through our list of customers and find the name of the patron that we're looking for this way. That might work for some smaller businesses, but there's going to be a point where the list becomes a little too long and too unwieldy to manually sort through. So we can also use the search feature up here to type in the name of the customer, the phone number, their address, any of the pieces of information that we're tracking about the customer. And we can see down here at the bottom of the screen all the different pieces of information that we can track about our customers, such as their phone number, their address, zip code. We can see here if they have any store credit, if they have any loyalty points. We can even add custom notes to the customer if there's anything else we want to track about them. We can also use this membership ID field here to attach them to a card, like a loyalty card. A number of different types of cards are going to work for this. We can use any card that has a magnetic stripe on it. So a gift card would work. We can send out dedicated loyalty cards. We've also had people use driver's licenses. If you're in a state that has the magnetic stripe on the driver's licenses, we can use that as well. We can also use barcodes if you want to make your own custom cards for your customers. So anything that we type into this field here is going to be searchable. And if we run the card through the reader, it's going to automatically bring up that customer. Once we found the customer that we want, we can select them either by double-clicking or hitting select up here. And that's going to attach this customer to the transaction. We'll see now in the upper left-hand corner of the screen that it's going to list out all of the customer's information. We can now go ahead and ring in an item. And when we go to payment, we're going to have a few more options in our specialty transaction drop-down box here. Certain transaction types like layaway or a quotation, rental agreement, gift registry are only available when you have a customer attached to the transaction. So we'll take a look at layaway for this example. We're going to go ahead and complete this transaction without putting any payment on the check. Because this is going to be a layaway sale, we'll pull this back up in a few moments and then pay it out. But the same basic idea applies to these other special transaction types. These are now available because it's going to be associated with a customer in the system. it wouldn't make sense to have a layaway transaction without that customer attached because we wouldn't know who still owes the balance. So right now we'll go ahead and complete that transaction. Again, there's no money put down on the sale at this time. And now we'll go ahead and bring that back up by selecting Recall Transaction down here at the bottom of the screen. Recall Transaction is going to show all of the past transactions in the system. There's a number of different ways we can sort through these. You can either see everything under the current customer, everything under a certain date range. For now, we're just going to have it show all of the outstanding transactions. So anything that still hasn't been paid out. And we'll see our transaction from today listed here at the top. If we double click the transaction, it's going to bring us an invoice showing us exactly what was ordered and what's due on the transaction. And if we want to recall it, we're going to go down here to where it says Recall Transaction. It's going to bring the transaction back up just as it was when we first put it on layaway. From here, we can either add items to the transaction, or we can just pay out the full amount of the item. So we'll go ahead and process this as a new sale. Type in the amount, select Complete Transaction. It's going to let us know the change due, and from there we can close out the layaway transaction. I also want to look at some other ways that we can ring in items in the system. We've been using this field here, which is normally used in conjunction with the barcode scanner. Right now we've been typing in the codes for the items just for our demo purposes. But there are other ways that we can ring in transactions onto the check. If for any reason we're having a hard time scanning in a particular item, maybe it's like a can of soda that has condensation on it and it's not easy to scan, we can always go down here to Skew Lookup. This is going to give us a list of all the items that we have in the system. We can go ahead and select an item from the list. And we can also use the search field up here to find different items in the system. So if I type in shoe, it's going to find anything either in the shoes department, from a shoes vendor, or that has shoes in the description. We'll go ahead and ring in one of these items. And instead of just ringing it onto the check, this item is going to prompt us for, in this case, what size shoe we're ringing in. This is a feature in the system that allows us more detailed tracking on items that would share a barcode or a SKU. So your size 8 tennis shoes and your size 11 tennis shoes might have the same SKU, the same barcode associated with it, but using that drop down, we can still separately track our inventory. And the same thing's going to apply for an item like a t-shirt. We can choose our t-shirt size, and then we can also choose our t-shirt color. And then when we ring in the same item again, we can choose different options. So the system can independently track our size 8 and our size 11 tennis shoes, just like it can independently track a medium black polo and an extra large yellow polo. Another way that we can add items to the system is by using these quick launch buttons over here on the right-hand side of the screen. And this is one way that we can customize the interface to better suit particular business environments. So right now we have a couple basic touchscreen buttons set up over here to ring in items like the dodgeball, basketball, and the catch game that we've been ringing in throughout the demonstration. If we go ahead and pay those out, we can go and take a look at some other ways that we can adjust the quick launch buttons. Basically, we can attach these buttons to any function we want to perform in the system. They can ring in items, they can ring in discounts, they can pull reports, they can attach customers, they can be shortcuts to payment types. Really anything that we can do from, really anything we do in the system at all can be associated with these buttons here on the side of the screen. And we can make that area of the screen larger if your business needs to make more use of those buttons. We can have multiple tabs going across the top, which are going to allow us more flexibility in terms of what we're going to do with these buttons on the screen. Another way that we can customize the interface is to right-click in this section here, and we'll go ahead and ring in an item just so you guys get the full effect. If we right click, we can adjust the size and some options with the font to make the check a little bit easier to read. So right now we have small font. We can bump that up to large font. We can make it bold. And we can also adjust what fields are going to be displayed here. So if we don't need the code to take up that much room, and maybe we want our quantity on hand. So quantity on hand, that's order. Maybe that piece of information is going to be more important to us for this particular business. So we can always adjust what fields are being tracked and what fields are going to display when the items first rang in. So if this is more important to us than the unit price, we can go ahead and make sure that quantity on hand is a little bit more prominent when we first ring in that item. So anything we do to change, we'll go ahead and make that font a little bit larger so it's easier to see, and adjust a few of these fields to make them a little more legible now that we increase the font. Once we have this the way we want, we can go ahead and save that layout. And now it's going to reflect these changes every time we log in. All right, we'll go ahead and pay out this item. And once we do that, we've seen the vast majority of the features and functions that are going to be needed for a basic employee who's just operating the system to ring in sales. Someone like a cashier, this is the vast bulk of what they need to know about the system. We are going to take some time to look at the manager side of the software now. We're going to do that by selecting the setup button here at the top of the screen. It's going to take us to our setup screen, and we're going to have a number of different options here that we're going to talk about. We're actually going to start with the first tab all the way over here to the left, which is called Positions. Okay, so our Positions tab here, this is where we create the jobs which are going to be associated with the employees. We're going to take a look at one that we already have set up in here called the cashier. You're going to see the different buttons that we have across the screen, pretty well correlating with our permissions here. And if we press on the little plus sign, it's going to open up a tree of permissions. We can see exactly what functions this job type is and isn't going to have access to. So if we continue to expand out all of these permissions, we're going to see a huge amount of detail that we can drill into with exactly what this job can and cannot do. If we open up point of sales, we can see that it gets as granular as giving them the ability to view gift cards but not issue them, to refill them but not edit any promotional rules with gift cards. It really allows a lot of different various job types to be added in the system. Each one can be configured to a very specific set of permissions. Once we have those jobs added, we can go into employees. This is where we add the actual users who are going to be performing those jobs. So if we have a cashier, we would just assign them the cashier position, and they would then get all of the permissions that we just assigned to that position. We can also see here any information that we care to track about our employees. Most of it's going to be optional, but we can choose to track their phone number, email address, home address. We can also add some custom fields in here, which we'll take a look at later if there's any additional information we want to track about the employees. We'll then jump over to the Stores tab. This is where we set up a lot of the general information about the business, such as the name, phone number, website, email address for the business. Also, our tax rates can be configured from this screen. This is the same information that's going to print out on the receipts. And we can further customize those receipts by going into the second tab down here called Messages. Invoice message is going to allow us to type in any sort of custom message that we want to appear at the bottom of the receipt. So that can be used for something like explaining the return policy, letting customers know about an upcoming special. You can direct them towards your website or social media, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, anything like that that you want to add. And there's also going to be options for specific custom messages when they're ringing in certain transaction types. So if you want a different message to appear when they have a layaway transaction, or when they have a gift card or a void or a return, you can have that print out instead of the default message for those types of transactions. Moving on to general settings. This is a lot of the nuts and bolts that we can get into at the back end of the software. This is going to allow us to customize the interface and also customize some things like payment types that we can see here on the left-hand side. So any payment types that we're not using, we can go ahead and mark as hidden. So if we're not accepting certain tender types like American Express or EBT, we can just mark those as hidden so that they won't appear on the interface. We can see once we click that, it's going to let us know, whether or not that's set to appear as one of the tender options. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the different special transaction types that we can ring in. Obviously, we want to hide any special transaction types that aren't applicable to this business. If you guys don't do any reservations or gift registry, we can always set that tender type to be hidden so that it's not cluttering up that drop-down box with any of the other special transaction types that you may want to ring in. Down here at the bottom of the screen, we can see how we can set up different types of customers. This allows us to group our customers really any way that's going to benefit the business. In this example, we have regular customers, VIP customers, wholesale customers, and we can apply different discounts, pull different reports based on these groups of customers. But we don't have to use these groupings. You could also set up your system for college students could be a group of customers, senior citizens could be a group of customers. You could really anything that would make sense for your type of business, you can add in there. Also take a quick look at age and ID verification. This is going to allow us to set a minimum age rule on certain items in the system. This is the first time we're going to be seeing what's called the query builder system, which is going to allow us to drill into the system, into the reporting to determine exactly what attributes of this item is going to require that age verification. So we could go to our departments and say that everything from a certain department requires age verification. We could say everything from a certain vendor requires age verification. We could choose from a list of our SKUs and say that only these 5 or 6 SKUs require age verification. We'll go ahead and set age verification up on one of our items right now. So right now it's only set up for SKU 1011. None of the departments or vendors, anything like that is going to be set, just one individual item in this case. Once we have that rang in, we will set the minimum age. We'll set it to 18. And then we'll hit save. We'll take a quick look at what will happen now when we ring in a sale if we go back to POS. Log in. When we ring in the basketball item and go to pay it out, it's going to prompt us to swipe through our ID. That, as long as it has a magnetic stripe on the ID, it will be able to go through the card reader in order to verify the age of that customer. If for any reason we're not able to swipe it through, maybe the mag stripe is scratched or they're showing like a passport or some form of ID that doesn't have that mag stripe, we can always type it in. It'll let us know if they're over or under the age limit. If they are old enough to buy the item, it'll let us proceed to paying out that sale. All right, we'll head over back to the setup screen. And instead of taking a look at the general screen, we're now going to take a look at attributes. Attributes are a very powerful tool that we can use within the system. Basically, attributes can be used to track any piece of information that isn't already tracked in the system by default. So a common example that we'll use here when talking about attributes is going to be a bookstore. So the system doesn't have many features or settings that are custom designed for a bookstore. They don't track things like the author's name or the ISBN number, but using these custom attributes, we can set up different fields on our items in order to track those different properties. So we can set up one for author's name, make that a text field, add the attribute, make another one for an ISBN number, make that a numerical field, and add that to our items as well. So now In addition to tracking things that we already had on those items by default, like department, vendor, brand, we can also track things like the author's name and the ISBN number. We'll take a closer look at how this works when we take a look at our inventory, but I do want to point out that these custom attributes don't just apply to items in the system, to SKUs. We can also apply custom attributes to our customers. So maybe if we want to track what our customer's birthday was, so we can send them special discounts on their birthday, we can add a custom attribute for a date field, add that to the system. If it's like a sporting goods store, we can track their favorite team. So we can tell if all of our customers are more Giants fans or Cowboys fans or Eagles fans, whatever the case may be. Maybe if their team wins the Super Bowl, you can send out a special discount just to fans of that one team, letting them know that the Super Bowl jerseys are half off that week, or any sort of other custom discount or attribute that we want to use there. We can also use these for employees if we want to track something like their start date or how many, if they've been written up, anything like that. We can add custom attributes there. Along with any of these other items that we see on here, our vendors, we can add custom attributes to the transaction itself, to purchase orders. A lot of flexibility that's going to allow the system to perform well in a number of different environments that we can do using those custom attributes. Then move on to inventory settings. Not quite as much that we need to talk about here. Our departments are very straightforward. If we want to add a new department, all we need to do is type in the name, select add, and it's now going to be an option on the list. Dimensions are going to be what allows us to track different size and color matrices on our items. So if we want to choose what size tennis shoe we're ringing in but still have that tied into one SKU, we can do so using these dimensions. Then go back to reports. There's a large number of reports available in the system. Like the permissions in the system, we can open them up using these little plus signs here to access the different drop-down boxes. Go ahead and pull a monthly sales report. It's not going to be much data in the sales report from the past few transactions that we rang in. Let's try to pull it from a little bit longer of a range. Yeah, there's not going to be too much test data that we can see in here, but it is going to break down a lot of useful information that we can see, such as sales by clerk, sales by department, the total sales. It also has a nice graphical interface there. We can pull another report such as sales by. We'll go ahead and pull this by SKU and select preview. We'll list out all the different SKUs that we sold along with some other information about those items. On any of these reports, we have the option to email them directly from the POS system. We can also export them to a number of different formats. That's going to include formats like Crystal reports, PDF, CSV, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, and also a rich text format if they just want a basic text document of that reporting information. Exporting those reports in those different formats is going to allow a number of different software programs to integrate with the Harbortouch Retail product. We can also customize these reports by using that same query builder system that we saw when we were setting up age verification. So if I only want this report to pull for specific SKUs in the system, I can set it to do so. We can also set it to only pull for a specific vendor or a specific department. And best part about that is we can also use the custom attributes that we added in the system. So if we added author's name for a bookstore, I would be able to pull any listings that we have under author's name and narrow down the report like that. So I could compare my Stephen King sales to my Tolkien sales and see which author was selling best that week. You can also save favorite reports over here on the right-hand side. You can create different buttons so that once you've identified the reports that you use most often, you don't have to scroll through this list of reports that we have over here on the left-hand side. You can just save it as a quick launch button over here on the right. Go ahead and take a look at some of the inventory options. We've seen this screen before when we were on the main screen searching different items. It's going to show us some of the basic information that we can track about these items. Some of these fields are required, such as the SKU, the description, the vendor, and the department. The price is basically going to be required unless we're doing like an open item. But there are some other fields here that aren't required, such as the product number, group, brand, season. All of these are optional. And we can also see the custom fields that we added, such as the author's name and the ISBN number. We can add any information into these, and we can put a toggle on this to either make it a required field or an optional field. If we go into prices, we can set up more complex discounts than we saw in the first part of the demonstration. From that screen, we saw how to do basic discounts like a percentage off, a dollar amount off, and setting a new price. From the special pricing rule editor, we can use some templates here to do like a buy one, get one free, buy one, get one half off. VIP customers get 20% off. We can make a lot more complex discounts using these different rules. This is also going to use the query builder. So if we wanted a buy one, get one free, and we wanted it to be mix and match for any items from, the jeans department, we could set that up so it would ring in that way. So anytime the department equals jeans, it'll give this customer a buy one, get one free discount. We could also use the same query builder system to say that it's only going to apply where the customer type is VIP, or we could say that it's only going to apply where the author's name was Stephen King, or any of the other fields and criteria that we're tracking about our items. We can apply that to these discount rules. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of complex discounts able to be accommodated using these special pricing rules. Then take a look at inventory items and lookups. First, we're going to take a look at the suggested maximums and the reorder points for the item. This is how much of the item that we expect to see in the inventory. So for our dodgeball item, we're going to go ahead and make some changes here. We'll set the suggested maximum at 50. We'll set our reorder point at 10 and our suggested minimum down to 5. Right now, we've been selling quite a few dodgeballs, so it thinks that we actually have negative 118. We'll go ahead and change that. Tell them we have 3. And the reason we're changing the inventory is because we've received new inventory. We'll change that in the system, and that's one way that we can manually update the inventory in the system. We can go into each item and set a new quantity for the quantity on hand field. Now that's not going to be efficient if we need to make a lot of changes to numerous items in the system. That will be better handled using a purchase order, which we'll take a look at later. Another thing that's going to utilize purchase orders is this reorder point and the suggested maximum. So since we're below the reorder point, when we do a purchase order, it's going to automatically add enough of this item to get us back up to our suggested maximum. Some other things that we can do is put multiple UPC codes and multiple lookups onto one SKU. This can be useful if you have one item that maybe you get from different vendors at different times and they both have the same barcode on them, but you do want to track them differently in the system. But when you scan that barcode, you want it to pull up that same item. This can also be useful sometimes in like a brewery. The brewer will have a different barcode depending on like when the beer was brewed. So the January batch will have one series of numbers and the December batch will have another series of numbers. The retailer may not care if the batch was brewed in December or January. They still want it to ring in as a as a Yingling case. But we can have multiple barcodes pulling that same item. So that way they don't have to do quite as much work to make sure that their inventory is reflected accurately. We can also track serial numbers through this interface. This is going to allow us to either import a range of serial numbers for the item, and then we can select which one is being sold at the time of sale. Or if we leave this blank, it will just prompt us to type in the serial number when that sale is made. This is required for some industries like a gun shop where they need to track exactly which item was sold to which customer. All right, so now we'll go ahead to purchase orders and take a look at how we would order more inventory for the system. First, we're going to have to name our purchase order, which we'll go ahead and name webinar, and then hit create new order. First thing we're going to need to do is choose which vendor we're sending this to. We'll go ahead and choose our child item vendor, so it'll cover that dodgeball item that we edited right before this. Once we save details, it's going to have us type in where we want this order sent to. We'll just fill it in with all the default information we have from the clothing store. And we'll go ahead and copy that information down for the billing address as well. If you have multiple stores, you could have it sent to one address and billed to another address if you're using the multi-site linking and you have multiple locations. We'll then hit Save Details. From here, it's going to automatically scan through and add any items that are below their reorder point. For us, that's going to include the dodgeball item. So if we go into Order and Receive, we'll see that it automatically added 47 dodgeballs onto this purchase order because it detected that we only had 3 and our suggested maximum was 50. So it's going to automatically put in enough to get us back up to that suggested maximum. We can also manually add items if I wanted to order some basketballs as well and some catch games. We can put those on here. So now we have 47 dodgeballs, 25 basketballs, and 15 catch games that we want to add to this purchase order for this vendor. Once we have that, we can go ahead and take a look at our report. This can be sent directly to the vendor. We can select email and send it right from the POS system. It's going to outline what we're ordering, where we want it sent, any other details about the purchase order. Again, it can be printed or emailed right from the POS system. At that time, we would really close out of the purchase order and wait for it to arrive at the store. We'll go ahead and skip that step and go right on to receiving the purchase order. We'll go ahead and receive these items with some options to edit. Here, once we receive the purchase order, and we actually want to do that for all items, not just one. So if you're getting it in multiple shipments, you could select individual items on the purchase order. But we're going to go ahead and receive everything on that purchase order at one time. From this screen, we can make any adjustments. If some of the dodgeballs fell off the truck and instead of 47, we only got 45, we could adjust that here. We can also make any adjustments if there was a shipping charge, if there was a discount that this vendor gave us based on ordering in bulk or anything else. We can apply that here to the purchase order. And then once everything looks good, we can hit Receive Items. Now, even though we receive those items, they're not actually added to the quantity on hand yet because the system assumes that they're still back in the receiving department. So once we hit Post is when we've actually unpackaged the items, put them on the shelves, and they're now ready for sale. At that point, we've done everything that we need to adjust the purchase order and add the quantity on hand to those items. So it'll prompt us to finalize it. We'll go ahead and select yes. And that's going to finalize the purchase order. We can hit Close PO, and it'll take us right back to our default purchase order screen. We'll also take a look at the Inventory Count tab. This is going to give us 3 different options for counting out the inventory in the store. The first one is a general or a generate complete. So this you would only use when you're doing a full inventory scan of the entire store. So any items that aren't scanned in with the quantity typed in afterwards during this scan, those are going to be zeroed out. The system's going to assume that you don't have those items in stock because they weren't scanned during the complete inventory. A less That's usually only done about once a year because it's normally very time consuming for a business to scan in every item that it has. But a little more common could be the generate selective, where we can pick a specific department or a specific vendor and just scan in all of our inventory for that more targeted area of the store. So I can do just the shoes department, scan in everything, and any items within the shoes department that we don't scan in, the system's going to assume we don't have in stock and bump the quantity on hand down to 0. And then generate spot. This is only going to affect the items that you do scan in. Nothing that isn't scanned in is going to be touched. It's not going to put anything down to 0 unless we specifically tell it to. So those are a few of the different options we have for inventory counts. Also in inventory, we'll go ahead and take a look at the label printing software. Now, the Harbortouch Retail software does have a label designer software component, but it does require working in conjunction with a label printing, label printer. So there is a third-party piece of hardware that you would need to get outside of Harbortouch. We don't supply the label printer itself. We've worked with Dymo and Zebra label printers before, and have had a lot of success getting those, working with the system. If you have another brand of label printer, feel free to send us an email and we'll see if we can work with that specific model. Usually if it works with Windows drivers, it's not a problem to get it set up with the POS system. I would recommend looking for something that connects via USB cable. So we'll go ahead and create a label here. First thing we would do when we're creating a label is set the dimensions. Right now this is set to 1 1/4 by 2 1/4. I could go ahead and make this a little bit larger, make it 1 1/2 instead of 1 1/4, or whatever dimension labels that we're using. Once we do that, we can add different lines of text. I can either make a custom line of text that's going to stay static across all labels, maybe the name of the store. We can also do things like add a line of text that's going to change depending on what item it's being printed out for. So instead of just putting a text field, I can have it pull right from the database. Have it pull the description, and we'll also have it pull the price. So this way I don't have to type in the name of the item and the price. It's going to automatically pull it for whichever item I use this template for. Then we'll go ahead and add a barcode. Adjust the size, put that down here. And now we'll save this label. And we'll take a look at how it's going to appear for different items in the system. So if I ring in our dodgeball, we can preview the printout. You're going to see that it says the name of the item and the price. Whereas if I were to pull it for a different item, like the basketball, I believe this one actually has the same price, but it is going to have a different name of the item listed here. So we can use the same label template for all items in the system. Some other options we have are under vendor. This is similar to the customer interface where we can type in exactly what fields we're looking to track about our vendors. We can also add in custom fields if we need to track more information than this. We can add in any shipping charge, duty charge, any discounts that we get from this vendor, any contact information. We also have different areas for the general business contacts and our individual point of contact. We already saw the customer screen when we were going through the employee section of the software, so there's not too much more we really need to cover here. Though we do see that now that we've added these custom attributes, it's going to ask us when the birthday of our customers were, if that's information we care to track. And we can go ahead and make this a little bit easier. So if we want to track a particular customer's birthday or their favorite sports teams, we can go ahead and save that. And lastly, we'll take a look at the day end procedures. The day end procedures are very simple in the Harbortouch Retail software. It's going to let us know how much cash it expects to see in the drawer and the different totals we have for the different tender types that we have in the system. We can count out the drawer specifically with which bills we have in the drawer, or we can just type in the total over here. We can also choose to close out the drawer for the entire store. That's going to be across all the POS stations at the business. We can also do just an individual station, so one specific POS system instead of all the POS systems. Or we could just do a day end for a particular employee. If you want to close out the register at the end of each shift when a new batch of employees comes in to take over, they would just choose this option. That won't affect anything else from other drawers or other employees. All right, that's just about going to do it for our demonstration here of the Harbortouch Retail software. And so we're going to go ahead and conclude the webinar for this afternoon. Thank you guys for attending. Hope you found the webinar helpful and informative. And good luck making your decision on your point of sale system. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.